Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. It's really wonderful to hear that everyone can, showcase something that they are grateful for right now. And actually, it's very inspirational to hear all of these bright spots. I was been taking some notes and because part of what we want to do at Essex Heritage is to support you and to amplify these bright spots and get those messages out. So thank you so much for sharing them. And right now, I would like to reintroduce our presenters for today. So Susan, Amita, and Jackie are going to go ahead and tell us about a really wonderful program that we were first introduced to. I know it's been going on several years, called the Rising Loaves Program, which is a community partnership with Andover Breadloaf and also the Lawrence Public Schools. And so we're in for a treat to hear about this wonderful program and how these folks were able to continue the program even as the COVID constraints hit all of us. So Susan, Amita, and Jackie, go take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Well, first off, thanks to Beth and everyone at Essex Heritage for calling on us to be the focus of the education forum this morning. We're really appreciative of that, and also of all the support that Essex Heritage has provided us across the years, not just through education, but also partnership grants, which have helped with historic preservation, collection processing, and most recently with accessibility in our main building and archival space. In Lawrence, we're installing an elevator, and they're about 2 days from calling to set an appointment with the Massachusetts Inspection Services. So that will be a big improvement for us in our facility. But while we're here today is to talk about the Rising Loaves program and what it's meant to us across the years, how it's built, but then also how we had to change because of COVID-19. The program itself was in its 6th year. We started it back in 2015, but Breadloaf, the partnership with Andover Breadloaf and Middlebury College has gone on for over 3 decades because of Lou Bernieri and later Rich Gorham, who were really spearheaded that partnership and their activities in Lawrence. The high school students are the group. Lawrence high school students are the ones that were the original focus. Later, a program called Slice began at the Boys and Girls Club in Lawrence for younger kids, K through 2, I believe, grades K through 2. And there was a real need for a middle school program because those students, those in-between students that were too old to maybe talk about the things that younger students want to talk about, but also too young to engage in some of the heavier topics that high school students do engage in. And so Mary Guerrero, who is also a History Center board member, and I and others talked about creating this program at the Lawrence History Center. For those of you who don't know, we're located in the former Essex Company complex in downtown Lawrence. Essex Company was the company that effectively built the city starting in 1845. And so really key to the history of the city. And our buildings that were built in 1883 tell that story of the history very well. So having a program, a place-based learning program in the heart of the city for middle school students, we felt would be really important. And so that we launched it in 2015, and I will, oops, hold on. Welcoming, I think we had a little over 20 students in the first year with 5 or 6 writing leaders. The model of the program is that we have directors who are effectively the mentors. Then we hire writing leaders who are youth from the city, high school, college students, and they act as, they work directly with the students who are all in grades, students entering grades 5 through 7. And they work in small groups and in large groups. You can see from these images, of course, on the left is our facility on Essex Street. And then the other are just students in the courtyard students in the research room with Amita in the lower picture, and on the right, which our faces are probably covering, are some wonderful young students who are working on weaving with an artist named Kate Delaney a couple of years back. So the program was ideal. It's a writing program, so students learn and explore through writing, but they're also exposed to art and naturally history and other locations in the city. You can see in one of the top pictures the tip of the Air mill clock and off in the horizon. So they're really able to learn effectively in the place where the history took place. So that was then. And we built that program, as I said, over 6 years. And leaders, the writing leaders, who you'll meet one of them later, Jackie Schierembergg, who will describe herself as a breadloaf kid, have let's see, so the original people like Mary Guerrero have almost effectively replaced themselves with very talented young people from the city to take on new leadership roles in the program as co-directors and to try to carry the program forth. I'll go a little bit further here to more imagery. These are images of places that the students went on walking tours, the Everett Mill, guest speakers that have come in to work with students. Depending on the theme, one year we had Healthy Me, Healthy Lawrence, and so they learned about cooking, healthy cooking, so that's one of the pictures there. We've had a musician doing taiko drumming, and that's also one of the images, but then we also have visited the Addison Gallery every year, and those are one picture of some students looking at artwork over at the Addison. So a very effective way to teach students not only about their history, but also just issues that are relevant to their lives and to what might be going on in the world today, which brings me to the pivot to what we all, back in March, we all had to decide what are we going to do when we have these programs in motion to convene students in person and we're all closed. How are we going to do that? Do we just cancel the program? Do we switch it to a remote model? How even effective would that be when you lose your place, when the place-based learning loses its place? But we started talking to people about educators who are working with students online already, and what will we do? Do we think students would still come? Could we still be effective? And it was overwhelming. People said students need to be reached out to. They need to come into this space and talk and learn and write. And so we decided to go ahead. The program is usually a 3-week program, 5 days a week. We pared it back to a 4-day program, just 2 hours in the morning for students, where our numbers dropped a little bit. We ended up with about 21 students, and we had 7 writing leaders, which was really, really good. And we're able to bring speakers from really anywhere, all over the United States and India also as well. So that was really very important. And we also wanted to continue to connect people to our archival resources, which is such a part of the in-person program. And so you're going to hear first from Jackie about how that switching the methods of Andover Breadloaf into an online format, how that worked. And then you'll also hear from Amita, Kiely, our collections manager, about how we were able to connect not only to the Rising Low students, but then also to the greater community with digital resources that we have available. So I'm going to switch you over and introduce Jackie Scherembergg. Jackie has been with the Rising Loaves program for a couple years now, but I'll let her describe more about her background. Jackie, you want to take it over?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Jackie. I am the school year program director for Rising Loaves. As Susan said, I've been with Rising Lows for a couple years, but I have been with Andover Breadloaf majority of my life since I was in the 3rd grade, and I am now a college graduate. So I'm a product of Andover Breadloaf, as I'd like to say. And for the virtual format this year, I would say, although we weren't able to be with each other physically, there's still a sense of connect and community over Zoom. And I feel like that's something Rising Loaves and Andover Breadloaf and the Lawrence History Center has been able to provide for these students. We were very afraid just because we do know a lot of students could have been very tired and worn out from Zoom and online learning. So that could have been where our declining numbers came in, but that never changed the amount of connection and bonding we've had in person or in virtual. It's amazing to see how in the beginning of our virtual program, uh, you know, kids were new to Rising Loaves. No one really knew, a lot of kids didn't know what Rising Loaves was about. And to come into a virtual space is very interesting. It was new for everyone. And we did have our pros and cons, but the kids were able to interact with people that probably wouldn't have been able to be there throughout the school year. I know people like Anthony Morales is someone who is very hard to get throughout the summer, and someone who like Lee Christian, who comes from India. She's been able to stay at home from in India and be able to interact with us from there. But I feel like in person versus virtual didn't change anything for us. And although we did have a lot of kids who were very shy in the beginning, they were able to open up to us at the end. There was such interaction between all of that. And we had our amazing guest speakers who were able to interact with our children as well and be able to bring our students out of their shells, even virtually. I'm trying to see what else, but even then we've been able to transition. Like Susan said, it's very to keep this programming going. And this is my first year as our school year program director. And we did have our difficulties in the beginning as well, where I know Amita can attest to this, where we didn't have a lot of people or anyone show up to our first one, but with more and more programming, there you go, the Rising Loves, we have it every month. But ever since then, our goal for that is just to teach kids who we're getting kids who still don't know what Rising Loves is, and it's still new to the idea, new middle schoolers, but they're able to understand. And I mean, is teaching them history. We're teaching them how to become curators and tell them, help them express what their story is and how they're able to contribute to their community, even though they're at home and even though we're at a distance from each other. So I feel like Rising Loaves, although it's become virtual, it's still a very impactful program for these middle schoolers because it gives them a space to interact and connect with kids they might have not even been able to know throughout the school year. And with us writing leaders, and we keep them, something about Breadloaf in our community keeps the kids coming. And it's that sense of community that keeps them here. That's what's kept me here for the past 15 years. So yeah, and then I know Susan has a beautiful sample of our writing from the virtual final reading. So Susan, if you can go ahead and play, that would be great.
So students would, just to add to that, Jackie, students would go out into breakout groups with their writing leaders every day. They would start the day with a writing prompt and perhaps a guest speaker, and then they would go off into the breakout rooms and then come back and share their work, which from anyone who works with kids, corralling kids and getting them to move from space to space is very difficult. But in Zoom, you just hit end break groups and they all come back into this collective space, which was really great. So at the last day of the program, we had a final reading, and the person who you see here frozen is Katerina Guerrero. It's actually Mary Guerrero's daughter, but she just happens to be where this lands. But we're going to hear from two students, Alex and Alicia, sorry.
So today, my name is Alex Chen, and today I will be sharing my magic pencil poem. If I had a magic pencil, I'd do good for the world. I would create many homes and shelters for homeless people. I would also make many adoption areas for children and pets without families. I would make more food so that no one ever has to go hungry again. I would draw lots of trees and plants so that we could always have food and fresh air. I would draw my dreams and all the things I want to happen. I would make machines that could do housework so that all servants will not have to work for a family, for just one family. I would create jobs and opportunities for the unemployed and make the world very, very beautiful. I'd fill back the hole in the atmosphere and draw many more animals and make endangered species flourish again so that nothing will have to be threatened to go extinct. The world will benefit from the magic pencil, and so will I. With the magic pencil, I'd also make more futuristic things like hovercrafts and intergalactic starships so that people can travel to space and back very quickly. I would make food farms less hostile and efficient and more efficient water sources. With the magic pencil, I would make many, many smiles. I would use the eraser to erase poverty, disease, and other things no one wants on this world. I'd erase the sadness from the hearts and erase the gloomy clouds on rainy days so that the sun shines bright. If I had a magic eraser, I'd erase all the dumpsters in the alleys, the floating pieces of trash in the water, and the bad staples that mankind has left on this planet. I would erase the gases in the air that lead to global warming and the natural disasters that ruin lives. My magic eraser will erase all the bad things, and the world will be once more beautiful. Up next, we have Alicia.
Hi, my name is Alicia, and I will be reading my I Dream of a World poem. I dream of a world where people embrace their differences, when we see each other as unique but equal, where we can yell out loud our minds, where no one gets discriminated against by their race, gender, or anything else. A world of laughter and love and no harm to each other. I dream of a world perfect for me.
So today,
Okay, so keeping in mind that this summer program took place in July, which was after much of the racial unrest began in the city. So not only pandemic lockdowns, but not in the city, in the nation, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. So some of the speakers, in an age-appropriate manner, did talk about themes like Black Lives Matter, and set a stage for students to express themselves about how they see the world, what they want to see in the world, how it's impacting folks in Lawrence, which is a majority minority city, and so definitely directly impacted by what was going on across this nation, continues to go on across the nation. So so that was another reason why we were happy to be able to connect with the students across the summer. And Jackie, I don't know if you want to add anything else to close out, and then we'll have Amita take over.
That's all it on my end, but thank you in advance for letting me speak.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, Jackie. And Amita, your floor is yours.
Yeah. So you saw those two wonderful children, two wonderful students, and just imagine how empty the History Center felt this summer without all those excited and passionate voices running around and learning about history in person. So that's one of the best things about the Rising Loaves program at the History Center is it gets the students into the Lawrence History Center, into the Essex Company headquarters, into such a important and historic complex in their city. This year, since we couldn't have them in the History Center, we in a way brought the History Center to them. So the day that I spoke to the students, we started off with a virtual tour of the History Center. So I walked through the building, through the closed stacks, through the vaults, through the research room, and kind of gave the students a tour of what they would see if they were in person. So we started from the street and went all throughout the building to show the students what they would see in person. Another aspect that they were unfortunately missing out was actually working with the primary source documents that they are fortunate enough to work with when they're on campus, on site during normal summers. So this year I focused on showing them resources from the collection that had to do with the 1918 flu pandemic. And we have a really rich archive of material on that, thankfully. And we were able to give it to the children in a virtual manner. So one item that we actually have in the collection is a mask that's from 1918 that was used by a young Lithuanian woman in 1918, same way we wear our masks today. And it was made out of material that was actually made in the Duck Mill in Lawrence. So it was a mask made in Lawrence, material made in Lawrence, and we have only one in the collection. So I was able to show the students through Zoom this mask, and we talked about, wow, they wore the mask just like we do nowadays, and made us think, are we saving a mask from 2020 for people in the future? We were also able to show the students, or have them listen to, an oral history we have, which is on the slide here, with Daniel Murphy Jr. And this man lived up near what was called Tent City, and it was an area in Lawrence and Tower Hill, kind of near where the cemeteries are today, where people who were suffering from the flu were sent, because it was thought that if they were outside, the fresh, cold air would help the disease go away or not spread. So there were hundreds and hundreds of tents housing people sick with the flu. And it was just really right in the middle of the city, up on Tower Hill, but really in the middle of neighborhoods. And you can see a picture in the slide below of the tents lined up. And so the students listened to this man in his own voice talk about what it was like to live around that area. And so he talks about hearing this loud, loud horn when it was curfew. So there was a curfew back then, just like now. He talks about the constant stream of horse and carriages taking away dead bodies, which we unfortunately saw a lot of that early on in the pandemic. He talks about the National Guard who would patrol the perimeter of this area, probably to keep people, probably more so to keep people out, maybe family members trying to get in to see their loved ones. So he kind of talks about the security involved with keeping everyone safe. And again, it's an original oral history that was done in 1993 when this gentleman was an elderly man, but it's his own words. So the students could hear his voice crack when he talked about the dead bodies, or just hear about him reminiscing and kind of looking back on the pandemic in 1993. And it was very interesting for the students to be able to listen to his own voice tell the story. And we also have a transcript of that interview too. So the students were able to read the words as well. So we were able to really bring the archive to the students in a way that we would have preferred in person, of course, but since we weren't able to, we were lucky to have things digitized and be able to show the students what we have that way. At the History Center, we really, like I said, we like to get the students hands-on working with the primary sources that we have, but we've also digitized a large amount because we know teachers are often looking for material about Lawrence history and about local history and how do you learn about your city. So we have a great deal of items that are available for teachers and educators to help people learn about Lawrence. And we realize people learn about Lawrence in different ways, or students learn in different ways. Some are readers, some are more visual learners where reading maybe doesn't get the information across very well. Some listen to things in an audio way and they're able to learn that way. So our material that we have for teachers covers all those bases. So if you look on our website where this slide is, it lists a whole selection of teacher resources. So there are photographs that have been digitized that students can look through. Some have a lot of detail, some don't have much. So there's a lot of guessing and hypothesizing you can do with these pictures. There's some curriculum plans about the founding of Lawrence and the immigrants that came here, and about the fall of the Pemberton Mill, which are really complete sets of curriculum that a teacher really could use a lot of class time, or it would take up a lot of classes, but they're very rich resources. And again, they're for free on our website, available to everyone. We also have some really cool videos for those who prefer to learn that way. So on the website, there is a clip of that Thomas Edison and his associates actually took in Lawrence in 1912 of mill workers leaving the mill. And it's maybe a 2-minute clip, and it just shows the thousands of mill workers pouring out of the mill. And you can see their cold breath coming out and how they're dressed. And it's really cool to see Lawrence alive in a way that you really can't in pictures or in books. There are other videos that have to do with the strike of 1912 that give a general overview of it, and they're on our website available. There's a very nice then and now video someone, an intern, Bernard Trubowitz, did, showing Lawrence in 1912, a picture of the city, and then he pans over to current day in 2012, Lawrence, and you can see the before and after. And I think it really gives students a nice idea of where they fit into Lawrence history, how they're part of the city, and it really shows them how they fit into the history. And it's really good at, you can see what used to be there, what isn't there anymore, and it shows the students, they can kind of see, wow, there's a lot that's still the same, and I really do have my place in the city's history. We have some oral history projects on our website as well for teachers. In addition to what you'll hear from Mark, we have some student work where they focused on oral histories of more recent immigrants. And this is especially great for our students now, since they're maybe descendants of more recent immigrants. So people who've come from the Caribbean, from Central and South America, from Asia. We have oral histories that talk about their experience that certainly students can relate to. I think that my time might be running out, but there's just such a huge amount of resources available. You can contact us anytime through email or a phone call at the History Center. And if there's something you don't see, we're happy to figure out what we have that can help you, because chances are that we do have something and we can find a way to digitize it. So I'm happy to share that with you, and I look forward to any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Amita. Beth, I think we want to hand it back to you for Mark. Okay.
So thank you so much. This is just amazing what Lawrence History Center has been able to do. You do have a wealth of information that's digitized, which has been tremendously helpful, and just so impressed with all of the work that you've done in the community. And would now love to hear from Mark to tell us a little bit more about an equally interesting and impactful program that he's been involved with for several years, dealing with oral histories in Lawrence.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this discussion. So just to reintroduce myself, I'm an educator at Phillips Academy in Andover, Mass. I teach Spanish in the academic realm. I'm also part of the interdisciplinary studies department, and I direct our global education programs, which are international and intercultural programs around the world. And I'm also the president of the board of the Lawrence History Center. And so one of the things that I do with my classes, and I heard Jackie, Amita, and Susan, say many of the same things that I would reflect on with regard to my own programming, is that it's very much place-based, it's community-oriented, and it really helps to capture the voices of the people who are creating history today. And so for me, that's what the oral history program is that I have been facilitating for, I was remembering, it's about 2012 when I think we formalized it. I've had different partners that I've worked with throughout the years, including Lawrence Community Works, Lawrence High School. You can see right behind me, this is one of my buddies from Lawrence High School, Cesar Sanchez, he's a Spanish teacher, or was. He retired a few years ago, and he and I really kicked off this partnership where we capture the voices of Laurentians for today. And one of the reasons why this program exists is because just moving around the city of Lawrence, Lawrence Heritage State Park, and also looking at the Immigrant City Archives, which is now Lawrence History Center, I and others recognized a dearth of voices from the current population of Lawrence. When I think of Lawrence Heritage State Park, how does the current population of Lawrence see itself in the heritage of their city? And so so that's one of the reasons why we developed this program, is to help represent the current demographics, which is majority Latino and Hispanic, and to give voice to those people who are living and creating history as we speak. So one of the really great things, and I wrote a little bit about this, that if you go to the Lawrence History Center website, you can see. But what is oral history? And I define it in a few ways, but it's really a democratic process where it gives, it elevates voices of all types. And it's not just the people who are in power, the celebrities, the movers and shakers, but it's the average everyday person who also has a story to tell. And so one of the really great things about oral history for me is that people have been really, I think, touched that we are expressing an interest in capturing their stories. I remember there was one person we interviewed just a few years ago who, he's a laborer, he's an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. He's got 2 children that he's raised in the housing projects of Lawrence. And when he knew that we were interested in capturing his story, he was sort of beside himself that somebody was taking an academic interest in his commonplace story. And for all of us, it's not commonplace. And in fact, he had many really fascinating stories to tell us, and I think really impressed the students. And so it's just one way to elevate those voices that you don't always hear. And we can do it, of course, in English or Spanish. And so that's another reason why this is great, is because a lot of the material that we see in local history is English based, and there may be some Spanish language interpretation, but I think we're trying to give more. We're trying to put that out there a little more prominently through our projects. And so, as you can see, the place-based, community-based, very personalized process that we've been following since about 2012, and even earlier, since 2004, I've really been doing some of this. It was no longer, it wasn't going to be possible last spring. So suddenly, on March 13th, when my school decided that we were going to be all remote, I had to pivot, and it was either, teach the history of Lawrence, and use resources that had already been collected to help to recreate this, or it was to continue the process, but using the tools that were available to us. And so back then, if you can imagine, nobody was familiar with Zoom. I had dabbled with Skype a little bit, and I'd used FaceTime, and I had used other digital technologies, but I had no idea how to use any of those to do what I normally would do in oral history. And so I started doing some research, and I found out some really great things. And I definitely experimented with different platforms before I committed to Zoom. Turns out that my school has an institutional account for Zoom, so all the features were available to me, including longer meeting times than the 40-minute allotment from, with a free account. So I figured that Zoom was probably a great way to go, and I ended up doing a lot of research on it, and then writing my own instructions for how I was going to use it. But I wrote it in a way that could be shared out as a as something of a guide for other people, and that's what's available on the website that you can see. And I understand that has made its way around to some of the historical organizations in Massachusetts and other places, including all the way over in Italy. Somebody's taken notice of it, which is kind of exciting for me to think about that. And so really what this does, I mean, Zoom, of course, you can record, you can spotlight speakers, you can do all sorts of really great things that help to make this experience as personal as possible. And the other really cool thing was that we could work with people, we could meet people. Well, I'll go back a little bit. Usually we would meet people on site. And so we'd go to the Lawrence Senior Center. We'd meet people who are part of that community. And then we'd go walking around the Campagnon Common, which is the sort of central park of Lawrence. And we'd capture B-roll there. We'd interview people out in the streets. We'd interview people at cafes, or places of work and things like that. And that was really cool because we could see people in the context in which they live. And at the same time, Zoom, of course, allows that as well, because we interviewed a person in her kitchen, another person in what might be his living room, another person in her office, et cetera. And so it really places the person in the context in which we're talking. And because it's because we're doing this in response to the pandemic, it also helps to demonstrate the impacts of the pandemic, where you know, the video quality is different than in other years where we're out and about, but this one shows very much a confined, how we're all living in confinement, and we're sort of in this box. And so the images that you see that I, you know, sometimes the students incorporated B-roll, which are static images that people provided to us. You know, video clips and things like that we could capture from the internet. So the whole quality of it changes, but it's not necessarily degraded, which was one of my fears about doing this remote oral history. And so and then the stories of that we captured also reflect this time where communities coming together in a time of crisis, and that's pretty much the theme that we looked for. So we interviewed leaders of the Psychological Center, the Point After Club, people who are doing things in the community, but also everyday citizens of the city and people who are friends of the city. And so we think that we captured a good cross section of the community, and that their stories really tell a story of the times that we're in. Anticipating that we're probably going to need some sort of remote element in the spring again. I've learned a lot, I think, from running this program. I think that that my students will be more adept with the technology, and so we used certain elements, but real basic features, video editing, I think, and things like that. We're going to be much more savvy about because we've all been living this experience for so long now. I think that also we have a better sense of a shared experience. And so I think that probably the conversations in the spring, and we don't have a theme yet, but they might go deeper into how this pandemic really has impacted us. So I think that during COVID, we'll continue deepening this sense of how Lawrence and the community around it is enduring the challenges of the global pandemic. And so I think I'll stop there. And I'm also eager to answer questions to know what you specifically would like to know about the program. And then also I'll just put a plug here. In the chat, I've put the website where you can see just about all of the oral histories that we've collected through this program. And it's over 40 now since 2012. And then one final plug, if you know anybody who's a friend of Lawrence, a Laurentian, having been born, raised, there and or worked there, please send them my way, because we would love to capture stories. So there, it's really, as I said, it's a democratic process. We like to elevate all voices, and it would be great to hear from everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mark. Amazing. So we have a few minutes here. We would love to know if anyone has a question for our presenters. And if you do have a question, if you could just either physically raise your hand, because I think we can see most of you, or use the hand raise icon.
I don't have a hand raise icon that I can find.
Go
Or
ahead.
maybe I just, anyway, so I have a question for Jackie, I believe, in your portion of the presentation. Since a lot of your information was done virtually, were you finding that there were some people you were not able to reach because of lack of resources, like laptops or tablets or something? And what did you do to solve that issue?
I would say I have been able to keep contact with a lot of our summer participants. And a lot of them, it's a lot of time issues more than resources, just because remote learning for a lot of these students is very difficult. A lot of the schools are providing students laptops, which is a very good thing to hear, that they're doing that. But I think over resources, it's very time-based. We've had to change our time for our school year programming a couple times just to figure out when would be the best to reach these kids, just because a lot of them end at various times. And in terms of resources, we've in laptops, in case they haven't, a lot of them do or are able to use their parents' phones or any sort of electronic device they may have on hand. But that's, aside from that, I haven't really heard much else from the students in terms of resources throughout the school year.
If I can just add, Barbara, for hands-on resources, we did distribute packets to students in advance of the start of the summer program. So things like drawing paper, art supplies, and they all got packets before we started, so that in breakout groups, if writing leaders were working with students, we knew that the students had the appropriate materials to make that successful.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question for the presenters? I'd like to know a little bit more from Mark about how you prepare the students to conduct interviews and what goes into that process, how it might not be the easiest thing to sort of come up with questions or even to approach someone you don't know well. So what is that process like as you work with young people?
Yeah, it is really interesting, because I have mostly my students are seniors and juniors in high school, and I have the occasional 10th grader as well. Last year, I had a couple 10th graders who were probably some of the strongest of the entire class. And so you never know who you're going to get, but and it's not only because it is a Spanish class, it's not only their linguistic talent, but also their maturity. And so you really need to have people who have developed those sensibilities, and it certainly is a delicate process because you can't just go cold into an oral history interview. And so many of the students will have been with me throughout we're on trimesters. And so throughout the year, we have this gradual focus from the macro to the micro. And so the macro is understanding how the United States is a Latino nation, effectively with more Spanish speakers in the nation than in the mother country of Spain. So we sort of understand the history of demographics in the U.S. toward a minority majority with a Latino predominance. And then we go into the sort of the meso area of the Merrimack Valley and how the Merrimack Valley is also a Latino region, and then go into Lawrence. And then the very micro is the individual in Lawrence. And so all of this understanding is necessary, but then of course we need to understand who the individuals are that we're going to interview. And so not all of them, like we interviewed Vilma Martinez last spring, and of course she has a really great web presence. She's a mayoral candidate for the upcoming election, but she's also been a great advocate in the city, and so she's got a lot of a really strong web presence. But then you have somebody who's not a celebrity in the sense that she is, and so how do we figure that out? So we do some pre-interview engagements with them where we're asking them, what story would you like to tell us? And so we really try to put it in their hands, like what story do you think is important to showcase, to highlight about who you are and your connection to the city. And so the students will take that and they'll maybe research some themes. If they see themes popping up, they may research the individual to figure out who they are. And then so they get a sense of who they are. And then the other thing too is that we develop some techniques around active listening. And so oral history interviewing, it's kind of a misnomer. A lot of people say interview, but it's not an interview like a reporter would do an interview where it's question, answer, a lot of back and forth. It's actually active listening. And so the person, sorry, my lights go out every now and then. I apologize for that. It's a little more dramatic now, but the interview is not so much a question and answer. It's more of like, I'll give you a prompt and you go with it. And so we do some active listening practice in the classroom, and then we do that. We practice that with each other, and then with some people that we're not as familiar with, and then we go into the interview. So there's a number of steps required before they go into the actual interview, and then we present the questions or themes ahead of time so that there aren't really any surprises. But we want it all to feel candid and natural and authentic, and so we do try to do them all sort of extemporaneously in real time.
Yeah, I'm sure it's quite a process. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very, very helpful to think about.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if anyone had something they'd like to share with the full group, something that maybe was a commonality in your discussion that you've noticed that has been working well, or something that you want to share. Sheila or Marianne, did you want to?
Sheila, go ahead. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Marianne. I think one of it is learning how to, like we're doing more videos, but we're very amateurish about it. But we've been able to work with the local cable company, DCAT in Danvers, and they've been very generous in loaning equipment and also editing some of our stuff. But I think it's also learning ourselves, where it's one of our staff people, Nora, who's doing the camera work, and then those of us who are being filmed on how to, do it. And it's very challenging. So I think that's great. We're moving ahead with that and finding that the more things we could video ahead of time and have on our website to teach people different things within our collection. And just listening to the Lawrence and all of that they're doing just really blew me away. And I was like, oh my God, that would be great. So
very inspirational, very inspirational. Yeah, thank you so much. Getting the video components online, I think it's really essential. Marianne, did you want to add something?
Sure. I was just going to say something we talked about in our group was sort of this initial rush to like get stuff out, get it online. Maybe this isn't going to last long. And then really to step back and say, wait a minute, hold on. What are we doing? What are we spending our time on? Where can we put our resources that aren't just going to get us through this moment, but are really going to have a longer life after that? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to say? And I think for us too, we've really step back to how do we respond by, effectively to the social unrest, to the issues of social justice that are happening in our communities. So I think it's been a little bit of a phase like that. It's been like a little bit of that roller coaster, and we all sort of seem to share that.
Exactly, Marianne. And I feel like I've learned so much in the past 9 months about all kinds of different things, and been able to connect with so many different kinds of people that I normally would not have the opportunity to network with because of everything else that's going on in a job. But and also we together with a colleague from the West region, he and I put together, I'm sure you all are aware of the National Association for Interpretation Certified Interpretive Guide course. We taught that virtually, and it was just, knowing now what I knew then, what I didn't know then, I think I would not have taken it on, because it is definitely an in-person educational experience. But we were successful, and we did a test drive with some of our staff that failed miserably, and we were like, okay, now we have to figure out how to make all these materials available to people, so we aren't just troubleshooting technical. And the other thing that's been kind of cool is that I'm learning so much technology. We usually, in DCR, we have all of these meetings that are centrally located. So I'm driving out to Worcester and everything. And what we're saying is, gee, now that we know how to do this, maybe we don't have to burn all the fuel and release all the carbon. And maybe we can continue to use these tools that are better for our earth and better for our sanity and reduce the traffic on the road. So there have been blessings and bright spots in this pandemic.
Absolutely. And I think that's really the theme for today. I want to thank everyone for contributing to our forum today. You all have so much to offer. We always learn so much. And I particularly wanted to thank our presenters, who were fabulous, really inspirational. Thank you so much. Be well, take care, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday season. And we want to continue these conversations. There's so many things that have piqued my interest that we just need to know more about. So to be continued. Bye-bye,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Be safe.